So the last little bit to do in this chapter is to move between our calculation of empirical formulas to molecular formulas. So we know that the molecular formula is often scaled up, where the empirical formula is in like lowest terms. Really, experimentally, we can figure out the mass of a compound, and then we can figure out that scaling. And so in these ones, you always want to know the empirical formula for the compound, and then we can figure out the molar mass of that empirical formula. Then we know the molar mass of the other, and to figure it out. I'm not saying this very well. Let's try this one. So you read back to the instructions. So the white powder is analyzed to figure it has an empirical formula, which you may have just had to calculate, of P2O5. So the molar mass of this, I can calculate. I didn't bother showing all my work because I'm really trying to figure out the molar mass of it. The compound has a molar mass of this. So this is the empirical molar mass. And we're given the molecular molar mass or formula mass. So many words. Basically, in this one, we can figure out what that scaled up version is if we take the big number and divide it by the small number. So I like doing it this way. It's the molecular formula mass. Molecular. Divided by the empirical formula mass. And honestly, I always annotate things this way. This one's going to be the big number. This one's going to be the small number. And what we're looking for is that whole number ratio that scales up between or scales down between, right? So in this case, we've got 283.88 divided by the 141.94. This gives me that scale version of what's going on. So this works out to 2. And so if I wanted the molecular formula, right, knowing that this was the empirical formula, I would just scale it up by a factor of 2. So P2O5, I'm going to multiply everything by 2, and that gives me a P4O10 as the molecular formula. So not a whole lot, assuming you can calculate the empirical formula. The last one, very similar. You can probably try this one on your own, pause the video, and then check out the answer. So we've got an unknown compound, but we know its empirical formula. We know that it actually has a mass of that many grams. And so actually it should be grams per mole. But what we can do then is figure out what is this scaled up version. We know that the molecular mass of this, or the molar mass of this, I should say, we can calculate in our normal way. And if we were to compare these two, right, we'd have the molecular formula mass divided by the empirical formula mass to figure out what is that scale version, right? And so if the scale version is 2, we have our empirical formula times 2 for our molecular formula of C10, H20, and O4. So that is the molecular formula. And that does us for our ways of evaluating kind of quantities of things as we get into this second part of the course. The key thing is dimensional analysis and using molar mass and Avogadro's number as unit factors.